because, it was the Wild West out on the sea. You had to be able to defend yourself if you were attacked by pirates or foreign countries, or war could break out.
Depending on the quantity of weapons, I think.
Yeah, I suppose it would.
100 crew and 600 weapons.
Well, but it very much depended too on his gift of the gab. And he was a master at disguise. He was an extraordinary. The characters are amazing. This guy Hugh Maguire, is just, he would fill volumes just himself. The story about this guy. And he apparently, as I say, used to disguise himself. We don't even have any concept of what life was like in those days. It really was even more exciting than all of the novels and stuff that we could ever possibly read. This was the real the way these people lived, and the intrigue and bouncing from this court to that court and shipped, especially if you were an officer and you had military skills and all of those things. So he knew what disguise to put on. He was a total chameleon in any situation, including languages. Anyway, he was able to bluff his way. Michael Collins had some of those skills as well. Was able to get through the cordon and sail into Lough Swilly with the ship that brought them away. So it was Maguire who really engineered, and none too soon, because right at that very moment it became very clear to O'Neill and O'Donnell that the game was up. That if they went to they were going to be executed or thrown into prison. He leased an 80-ton vessel in France, armed with 16 cannon and manned by 60 heavily disguised soldiers. Maguire set sail in great secrecy from Nantes and made for Ulster. Near to his destination, the ship was arrested by a Scottish warship and held for 2 days. Fortunately, Maguire had put nets and salt aboard, and he convinced his captors that he had come to Ulster only to fish. On September the 4th, 1607, today is what, the 3rd? Sorry. The vessel sailed into Lough Swilly and anchored off Rathmullen. At nightfall, a man came ashore with Spanish ducats and set out to bring the news to the Earl of Tyrconnell of the ship's arrival. That's O'Donnell. 2 days later, a messenger reached the Earl of Tyrone, who was staying with Sir Garrett Moore, foster father to his son at Mellifont. Chichester, who had just had a meeting with Tyrone nearby at Slane, observed afterwards: the manner of his departure, carrying his little son with him, who was brought up in Sir Garrett's house, made me suspect he had mischief in his head. Harm I knew he could do none, if they were upon their keeping, for he was altogether without arms and ammunition, and his flight beyond the seas I should never have suspected. Sir Garrett himself reported that Tyrone wept abundantly when he took his leave, giving solemn farewell to every child and every servant in the house, which made them all marvel, because it was not his manner to use such compliments. So I like this part now. I'm going to do with it. So once he got the message in Mellifont, which was on the other side of the country, that Maguire had a ship in the Swilly, and then he knew that he was leaving. He knew that was his. He had no choice. Otherwise, so the very man that he knew was doing him in, Chichester, he had met with him in Slane, and probably Slane Castle, where they have all those beautiful outdoor concerts now. The Earl made his way from Mellifont to Dundalk, and from there to Armagh and Dungannon. He stopped only when he reached the Crieff, a house on a lough in the wilds of Tyrone. The problem now facing the northern lords was to find all their children. Now, these are the little nitty-gritties that I love. Forced in the Gaelic tradition over a wide area. Sorry, fostered in the Gaelic tradition over a wide area. So you see there's fosterage, and oh my God, my kids are everywhere. For 2 days, O'Neill stayed in Tyrone, frantically searching for his 6-year-old son, Con. But Con could not be found, for he was with his foster family rounding up cattle from their summer grazing in the hills. Then at midnight, the Earl and most of his family and servants set off across the Spurn Mountains. According to St. John Davis, quote, he travelled all night with his impediments, that is, his women and children, and it is likewise reported that the Countess, his wife, being exceedingly weary, slipped from her horse, and weeping, says she could go no further. Whereupon the Earl drew his sword and swore a great oath that he would kill her in the place if she would not pass on with him, and put on a more cheerful countenance withal. I just love those little nutty words. A year before, Countess Catherine, now remember she had come from a very spoiled background, daughter of the Lord McGuinness and Tyrone's 6th wife. So he had, he was not exactly the romantic type at that stage, had told the veteran servitor, Sir Toby Caulfield, that he had been the victim of the Earl's brutality, that she had been the victim of the Earl's brutality and drunkenness, and that if she had 200 cows, she would leave him. So obviously, the story of him drawing his sword and he said, if you don't get back on that horse, might probably had some truth to it. On the way through Derry, the unsuspecting governor invited the partner to dinner, that is the governor of Derry, which the Earl refused as graciously as he could. When they got to Rathmullen, a child with 6 toes on one foot, which it's incredible too, by the way, how superstitious these people were to this day. Or, I'll tell you another instance about their superstition in a moment. Was considered very lucky, was sent for, and they took the infant violently, which terrified the foster father.
6 toes were considered lucky?
I guess. I never heard that one before, but there was all kinds of things considered lucky. By the shores of Lough Swilly, all the indications were that the flight had been prepared in extreme haste. The Earl of Tyrconnell was without his pregnant 17-year-old countess. He had not dared to risk arrest for going to Maynooth, where she, Bridget Fitzgerald, of the Fitzgerald, the daughter of the 12th Earl of Kildare, and granddaughter of Charles Howard, the Earl of Nottingham, and Lord High Admiral of England, was staying with her grandmother. Though the ship had been at anchor in the Lough for 11 days, it was not until the final day that Maguire felt he could risk arousing suspicion by taking provisions on board. I suspect that if Lord Tyrconnell had gone down to Maynooth and brought her home, he might also have admonished her and said that she would need to have a more cheerful countenance withal. So, that's not exactly what these women did. Actually, it turns out that this 17-year-old countess, of course, Red Hugh died or Tyrconnell died, they all died in Rome, actually all, quite frankly, of fever because of lack of sanitation and the hot weather down in Rome. That's what they all died of. Well, just nobody really tell you the truth. That's what they all died of a fever, and they were all living in those towns.
They weren't used to that.
Pardon? They weren't used to that. They had no immunity, and obviously the rank. I mean, even in my lifetime, you go down south of France, you could smell the damn cities miles away. It's not so.
They were poisoned.
Pardon? I don't think so. I think that O'Donnell was poisoned in Spain by an English ship. I think that was him. I don't think any of them were poisoned, and I think they were poisoned by the putrid, fetid water and just the conditions there. I mean, Ireland was extremely healthy compared to where they were. I mean, it just total. Anyway, I like those interesting little stories, so that she got left behind. The English actually picked her up. See, there was still she was still the daughter of a very, very great English lord, the Fitzgeralds. So they actually took very good care of her. She brought her to England and gave her a pension. The two earls and their families crowded aboard the vessel, though there were fewer than 40 of them. They represented the cream of Ulster's Gealic aristocracy. Altogether, including the soldiers and sailors, Cúchonach Maguire had brought with him, this Hugh Maguire, the ship's complement was 99. That's traditionally what has always been quoted, 99. Far from being bid bon voyage by the people of Donegal, they were angry MacSweeneys waving weapons on the shore, bitter that the Earls had seized some of their cattle as food for the journey. Yeah, come back, you rascals, you rogues. The Earls themselves reported to King Philip that at noon on Friday, September the 14th, leaving their horses on the shore, with no one to hold their bridles, they went aboard a ship to the number of about 100 persons.